Okay, I basically just recorded this fucking video, and then I looked at the audio, and it turns out my mic was like off. So I'm just gonna speed run this shit. So I broke up with my best friend of like 13, 14 years. His name is Joe. Little backstory about how like how well we got along with each other. Um, we were friends since like second grade. So and I was over at his house like every day. We lived like a house apart from each other, just like the typical like bestie friendship. And so he had technology faster than I did and a lot earlier than I did. And the tech that he had, like the phone and the Xbox and computer, he got it was usually better. And basically what I'm trying to say is that he had access to internet before I did and was like more exposed to it than me. Um So in middle school, we played like games like Counter Strike, CS:GO, not like 1.6, and like Rainbow Six Siege. So no, these communities not known for their progressiveness, let's say. Um, and early middle school, or I think I want to say like late, yeah, no, early middle school, I got invited to this Discord server. Um, with to play Rainbow Six with, and they were from Texas. And they were about what you would expect. They were super racist, super sexist. And from what I know,
Joe, his name is Joe.
time hanging out with them than I did, so got more exposed to that shit. Um, but I also spent a lot of time with them. So in terms of like how rancid we were like racist and sexist and stuff, I would say we were about equal in middle school. Um, and he got a girlfriend. Uh, she was super toxic for him, and basically after that relationship, I want to say it was about a year long. Um, it just got way worse. Like it was a lot more sexist. Or he was a lot more sexist, a lot more racist, especially against you know like Asian women. And at that point, even I was like a little like, ooh, I don't know about that one, chief. So, um, like this is where I would mark like the first point where I was a bit like disillusioned with him. And like the cracks are starting to show. Now in middle school, I moved around a lot, like at least once a year. So I hung out with him a lot less than I normally did. So this meant that I was hanging out with my friends, he was hanging out with his, um, and we just kind of weren't talking and influencing each other as we like once did. So high school rolls around, and for the most part, we kind of stopped talking, um, and like hang out like we did. Life gets busy. It happens, right? Nothing, no biggie. Um, Particularly, he had like a friend group with like his sports team. Um, like that's where most of his friends from his friend group were from. And from what I know, they were also making those kind of jokes and stuff. But Nikita was the worst of the group. In high school, I got a girlfriend. She was this little sweet black girl, and about 6 months into that relationship, um, I I got the idea like, hey, I should probably like introduce him to the whole friend group, and you know, yeah. And then I kind of took it back because I was like, actually, I don't think that's a good idea. Um, Even when like I was in the Discord talking to them,
His name was Jack.
I'm just kidding, it's still Joe. Would make jokes like slurs and calling her like monkey and shit, stuff like that. And I just kind of went against the idea. I didn't think it was a good idea at the time. I remember I had a talk with him. I was like, "Hey, man, if I do bring my girlfriend around, could you like not. And I remember I was pretty stern in that conversation. And I don't think I ever really did bring her around the friend group that much. Twice did. Um, but anyways, fast forward to now. Okay, it's college. We've been talking even less. After high school, we talked a little bit. Like we started a Minecraft server. We did Terraria. We kind of like we played like Lethal Company together. But um, in terms of hanging out in person, it was a lot less. Almost like pretty much like non-existent. You know. But um, this is kind of where the story actually starts. He had this friend group in high school that I never really like talked to or even seen before. And I think the first time that I hung out with him was, or with that friend group, was they invited him and me and his girlfriend to go on like little shooting, to shoot shit, basically, like in a field. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm so down. And we did that. Nothing really exciting happened. But this was the first time I was introduced to that friend group. And I was definitely uncomfortable with the shit that they said, like slurs and you know, you know, right? So the second time that I interacted with this friend group was this Halloween party. Me and Nikita, we decided to go as like Shadow Wizard Money Gang. If anyone remembers that meme, we just wore like a shitty $10 robe on Amazon. Like it was nothing special. Um, and again, I still didn't really know anyone at that point. It was more of a party, like a kind of like a high school reunion kind of thing, just like getting back with the people that used to hang out with in high school. And I remember I met this guy Gabe. Gabe was super cool, and he was also in a similar situation where he didn't really know that many people, and he was kind of like a plus one to what I would call like the core members of that friend group. Um, so I kind of just hung out with Gabe the whole time. I fucked with him heavy. He super chill. He didn't really know anyone also. Um, and toward the end of the party, I was super tired. Like I wanted to go home. I usually like didn't socialize like that, you know. So yeah, I remember two of the core members of that friend group, Colin and Gabe. They made this joke, or like it was like a bit where Colin, the white dude, was like pretending to be like a slave master with a whip, and Colin, or sorry, Aaron was like Aaron is a black dude, and he pretended to be like caricature of a slave, um, in those like kind of accent voices, right? I just remember I was shocked. I was like, what the fuck am I looking at right now? Um, and so we we bounced. Okay, so during the car ride home, I was asking like, hey, do you want to stop and get like Taco Bell, and how's the wife and kids? Just small talk, right? And once we got home, I was like, hey man, we gotta talk about that fucking moment there. And I would divide the conversation into three parts. Part one being I addressed Colin and Aaron's like little skit, and then that conversation turned into Joe behavior and the friend group. And the third part was when we went to go out shooting. But that's not really relevant to the story. I'm just gonna skip it. I brought up the joke, and I was like, "Hey man, that shit wasn't cool," and he agreed, but it was more of like he was kind of defending it a little bit, and like kind of trying to provide some explanations for it. And I was on the opposite end. I was like, dude, like, what the fuck? Like this shit is not okay. That joke should never been made, and I tried not to make a big deal out of it because it wasn't my friend group, and I could just stop hanging out with them, which was my plan anyways. I remember bringing up that even if they are like even if they are good friends, one, I personally just am not okay with that shit. And I don't want to be around people who are. And he made more of the argument of like, hey, like they're like I agree with you, and I also feel the same way, but they're friends and they've been friends for a long time. They're okay with this kind of stuff. Um, these jokes can be made like between them, like they're fine with it. So like what's the issue? And I said the issue was within their friendship, fine, whatever, right? But at this point, I kind of more or less pitied Aaron, and I just kind of thought Colin was kind of a dickhead. Um, for like I don't know. And he asked me like, okay, like why do you pity him? Because I like he said like Ethan, that's kind of like it kind of feels like you're on a high horse right now. Like your it's not like your issue to take offense to, right? And I responded with like, look, in a vacuum, like their friendship, fine, whatever. They can it's fine. But it wasn't. That joke was made as like a spectacle in a room full of fucking people. I happen to be in that room. Not a fan of that part, right? Um and just kind of the context of racism in America and slavery and like America's history with racism and the kind of ideologies that it normalizes and pushes, like that's what I have an issue with. And I don't really care whether or not if they know that. I care about the effect, which is it's normalizing it, it's making light of something that I just don't think should be made fun of or like made light of. Um and from what I could gather, they like Colin and Aaron and that friend group didn't really think of it that way. I do, however. So not to say that they're like I'm not trying to say that they're like stupid, but I just don't care if they it's either they're unaware or they know and they just don't care, which either one I don't know which one is worse. So I tell that to go. Okay. And he goes, okay, well, like, where's the line for one, like, being able to make jokes, and two, in like a broader sense, like, where is the line? When is it okay? And I respond with, like, yeah, I do agree that within like consenting friend group, it is okay to make those jokes. But with Joe specifically, he isn't the type of dude to really be aware of that kind of stuff. And the jokes that he does make are they weren't even jokes. They were just distasteful. Like he's just saying slurs. He's just like calling like black people monkey. Like it's just crazy shit, right? It's not like okay, I'll give an example. A couple days ago I went to a party and it was my friend and we were at her like condo and her roommates brought some of their friends, and some of her friends were Asian. And my friend Makaya, Makaya, if you're watching this, I love you. You're like my favorite person ever. Um, she like misnamed one of the Asian girls, and I was like oh like I see how it is. Right? And she's like, no, no, like, no, like, fuck my bad. Like, Ethan, they're literally fucking twins. And I was like, you would say that shit. And that was it. That was the end of the joke. It was like, it's pretty lighthearted, you know, just, freak out a little bit. And that was it. not anywhere close to whatever the fuck that those guys were doing, Aaron and Colin. Like I think the argument that he made was jokes like that you can make as extreme of a joke as the friendship or the trust in that friendship allows. Which, again, I agree to that, but that wasn't my point. My point was that this shit doesn't exist in a vacuum, and you have to look at the context of the joke you're making, where you're making it, who you're making it to, and just the overall context of America and how fucked racism is in America, and the fact that you're like pushing this rhetoric and normalizing these like sayings and jokes and slurs. Um, that's what I mainly have an issue with. You know, like that's like the real meat and potatoes of my argument. And he says like at this point the conversation is mainly I'm just lecturing him and he's kind of responding. Because I bring up a point that I think is true, but if I were to have this conversation again, I would not bring up I would not bring up that same argument. The argument I made was that hey, there are some things that like you never know how what how what you say is going to like oh my god. Okay. My argument was that you never know how something you say is gonna affect someone else. You know? Um and like some things are innocent enough. Like maybe there's a phrase or some like regular talk that maybe the other person just doesn't like or it bothers them um because of like some past stuff or whatever, right? Like that's fair game, like whatever, right? But stuff like racist shit and just insulting people and pushing those kind of phrases and slurs and ideologies and normalizing it and making light of that shit when A, you're not even in the position to do so, and two, why the hell would you? Um, there's no like room for interpretation. There's no like, well, maybe, right? It's just like it's gonna be a bad outcome, right? There's no way you can spin this shit, right? Um, and I do think it's true, right? But if I were to have that conversation again, I probably would have just said, "Don't be racist because like you suck if you are," and it's just gonna be as simple as that. Oh, I don't think I said this, but the conversation we got home at around 11, 12 ish, and this conversation lasted until like 6 or 7 in the morning. This was a long ass fucking conversation. Um, then we went into like what is racism, like how would you define it and what does it look like, um and I defined it as like pretty like textbook boring answer, which was like racism is when another group kind of thinks they're better than another, or at least in America they kind of have power over another group and they exert it through like institutionalized racism, um, ideologies of like eugenics, like or not sorry, not eugenics. Like my race is superior than yours because of my genetic makeup, like Neanderthal DNA and right, that kind of shit. And it's kind of a tool for power. Um, and so the definition that he gave was I don't know. I feel like this one he was using some whack ass logic. He said, okay, well, first of all, racism is like a to study it, it's like a sociological issue. Like a fuck, yeah, it's like a societal issue. So you have to look at it through like sociology. And I was like, okay, I follow. And then the definition he pulled out of his ass was like racism is whatever that population of that society agrees it to be on. And I took immediate issue with that, and I said, hold on, like what, dude? um, because okay, if the majority of the population of that is white agrees that nothing is racist, are they correct? Or I'll take it a step further. If if let's say it's like 50-50, like 50% of the population is white, the 50% and like they all think the same way. Um and the other population the other 50% of the population is black, and let's say like 25% of that black population has internalized racism. Am I really supposed to listen to the 75%, Um and so after that, the conversation very much stopped being about Aaron and Colin and like transition into me not being okay with his behavior and the jokes that he made. And I brought up pretty much all the same shit that I just did, where I talked about like us in middle school and us in high school and us now, and how like the jokes that he's been making haven't like I haven't been okay with it. And mind you, other people have brought that up with him too, like people like his girlfriend, and I think like other people just in his life that I'm not gonna mention. And I think the reason why he didn't take it um like seriously whenever those people brought it up is because they didn't like articulate their argument as well as I did. And I'm for sure they did, he and whoever brought it up didn't talk about it as long as we did during that night. Um, I don't think I got it on this recording, but in high school, um, I had like a reality check with my girlfriend about like 4 or 5 months in, um, where I was singing a song. I think it was like a Biggie song, and I said the N word, um, and she heard, and she like obviously took issue with it, and that was like my kind of reality check. Joe never really had anything like that. Um, for the record. So this conversation was serving the purpose of the reality check. Now, I do really miss his family. Like growing up, his family loved me. I love his family. Like there was super inviting and welcoming, and whenever there was shit going on at my house, I knew I could just like go over to his place and relax a bit, right? So we went on trips, and we like went to the movies, and we'd always like eat meals together, and it was great. Like it genuinely felt like I was like it was my second home, and I really felt welcomed. I felt more welcome there than I did at my own house. And yeah, as
His name was Jack. I'm just kidding. It's still Joe.
I remember like in middle school, like up until middle school, growing up with him, he was a great guy, man. Like he was super sweet. He was like a sweet boy, And after that relationship with his evil middle school girlfriend, he kind of turned into a different person. Um, and I did kind of feel that shift. And then after not talking to him for so long, up until like the end of high school and talking to him again, I kind of felt like I didn't know him. Um, that he like wasn't the same guy that I remember, like playing Halo with and you know stuff like that. Like it just felt like he changed too much, or maybe I changed too much. Maybe it was me. So the aftermath is mainly after that conversation. We kind of had a couple conversations like over Discord. Nothing really too important, I would say. But I remember I was really fucking pissed at him for a pretty good while. Um, and I think it's been a couple months since I've talked to him. And I wanted to make a video about it so one, I don't forget like when I'm older, and two, I think it's a pretty interesting story. I definitely say I learned a lot from this experience. I'm actually surprised that it more or less like kind of ended the friendship. Um, I didn't know such a big change could happen, so quickly. Um, and yeah, that's basically the whole story. Okay, so I just watched it back and I realized that wasn't really much of a conclusion. So, um, I think I learned how important my own piece is, and that protecting it is not easy, but it's fucking worth it. Um, I kind of made this video out of nowhere because I went to this party with my friend and I had a great time. It was probably the most fun social event that I ever went to in my life. And I wasn't like high or drunk or anything. I was just like having a good time. And this party, it was like I want to say like maybe 10, 13 people. And I only knew like four, maybe three people there. And even then I had a great time. And I bring this up because I was reflecting like of all of the social events and like hangouts I did with the old friend group, like the one I talked about in the video, I didn't really enjoy them that much, to be honest. And I realized maybe I'm not like an antisocial person. I just need to go to social events with people I fucking like, and I'll have a great time. So yeah, I haven't talked to Garo since then. Um, or like since our Discord calls and stuff. Garo, if you see this, uh, cool. If you don't, cool. All right, goodbye.